has backed down from his defiance of a court ruling that restored early voting hours in his state. Republican Secretary of State Jon Husted initially blocked local officials from complying with the court order, but now he's reversed course and even issued an apology. He still plans to appeal, but this is a big victory for Ohio voters. But it makes you wonder, what happened to the Republican Party? The party of Abraham Lincoln, the party of Frederick Douglass. Today I was struck by a powerful column about Douglass in the New York Times, written by Yale professor David Blight. Blight described how Douglass escaped from slavery and fled to freedom in Massachusetts back in the 1830s. His name then was Frederick Bailey. Blight says, quote, "This fugitive slave was effectively an illegal immigrant in Massachusetts, susceptible under federal fugitive slave law to capture and return to slavery at any time. Despite this threat, Frederick Bailey was determined to vote as a free man. He knew he couldn't use his own name, so instead he took a big risk, changing his last name to Douglass so he could exercise his right to vote. Frederick Douglass could have stayed in the shadows. He could have kept a low profile, but instead Douglass risked his own freedom and went to the polls. He would eventually become the greatest abolitionist in America, a leading figure in the new Republican Party. 160 years later, officials in that party are trying to suppress the vote, which Douglass risked his freedom to get. 16 states have passed restrictive vote ID laws in the last 2 years. They account for nearly 79% of the electoral votes needed to win the presidency. This Republican campaign to suppress the vote is a betrayal of the legacy of Frederick Douglass. But some of us will use the same resolve that Douglass did, that no matter what we have to do, we must stand up and protect our right to vote. It defines what America's about. It defines who we are as Americans. It defines our responsibility as citizens that President Obama talked about. We may not be in Douglass's old party, but we're in the spirit of Douglass when we stand for voter rights.